Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and my brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you? Tommy's on location this morning.
I'm on location this morning, Eric. Thank you. I would prefer to have been in the studio with you, but I'm on location here at the Great Oaks Career Campuses, which is in Cincinnati, Ohio, and giving a presentation this morning to a sorority that is bringing together about 100 of their members as part of their quarterly retreat. So I'm going to be working with them, and they're going to be working with one another around conflict resolution and courageous conversations. Okay. How to have those difficult conversations, particularly when it's a mission-driven organization. And so sometimes we do kind of get in our own way at times when we have our own agendas and things like that that may come up. But I'm excited about the opportunity to share with them this morning.
Absolutely. Anytime we have an opportunity, well, anytime people reach out and seek out counsel from someone, who's skilled like yourself, to really be able to engage them in a conversation and developing some skills so that they may have better, more productive relationships, man, that's awesome. People don't do that enough. And certainly that's something that's critical in most of our families, in our organizations and the like. Tommy, we always start off by just sort of talking about our week. How was your week? Anything interesting happen across the week?
Well, the most interesting thing that happened this week was Bryce is going off to college, North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. And this week, Eric, I had to pay for his tuition.
Woo!
That's basically what happened.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So lightning pockets up a little bit there.
Boy, I was floating on clouds, it seemed. Boy, I was weighted down from the savings of the tuition. But when I let him know that, that was taken care of, because for whatever reason, he was overly concerned about the tuition. Yeah. And I had reminded him countless times over a 6-month, 9-month period, if not longer, you don't have to worry about tuition, right? We got that. You worry about school.
Right.
And so I understand his angst. And so I reached out to him and like, hey, that's taken care of. Go down there, have a good time, kick off the new year, and I'll see you when I see you. So that's the best thing that happened to me this week.
Right. Well, that's powerful, man, because, it is no light matter, tuition. Those are heavy weights to carry, even if you've been preparing for them. So kudos to you around that. This week for me is a continuation of the rehab journey. And I had a chance, as I shared with you, I appreciated Tommy checking in on me a couple of times, man. But, I went to physical therapy and was able to ride the bike. On Tuesday, I could not. It was like I tried to pedal it once forward, couldn't do it. Pedaled it backwards, 3 or 4 times backwards. But even doing it backwards, Tommy, it felt like King's Island, like when you're going up the roller coaster and you're at the top. That's how I was feeling, man. And then by Thursday, I had enough flexibility had come that I was literally 10 minutes like it was nothing. And a lot of things came into perspective when I was there. It was a woman there that was my same age. And she got her knee replaced in June. And she was still on the walker, Tommy. She only had 60 degrees in terms of flexibility. And I'm at 115 now. The goal is about 120. And so I was grateful that God has really is helping me in this sort of speedy recovery. But pain is always ever present, Tommy.
Mm.
And I'm just, you have to get to a place where you're used to enduring pain.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times nobody wants pain in our lives. But pain is something that comes whether we want it or not. And after a while, you have to learn how to live with pain. And for me, that's right now with the knee. But there's all kinds of different ways that we experience pain in our lives. And so being able to navigate that, put it in perspective, work your way through it, acknowledge it is something important. The other thing, just for a minute, react to the Olympics. Any highlights for you around the Olympics?
You know, it's been kind of bittersweet, whereby, unfortunately, Eric, I haven't been able to catch all of the Olympic events. I know they're showing them on a station, a streaming station, Peacock, but I haven't been able to get to that. You know, from the U.S. perspective, we've had a couple of disappointments. That men's won by 400.
Oh, that was just
Won by 100, four by 100. Sorry.
Yeah.
Again, Olympic after Olympic after Olympic,
Same
we
mistake.
cannot move the baton.
Yeah.
And when I saw it happening, and then I saw, you know, the second leg, he had to like slow down, almost stop, so he wouldn't run out of runway, which he eventually did.
Yeah.
Right. It was embarrassing. And
Right.
then at the end, they showed the scores. USA DQ, just straight disqualified. So I was very, very disappointed in that. However, I'm looking forward to today's women and men's basketball.
Yeah.
To see how we do with that.
Right.
I'm hoping it can, you know, lighten my spirits of the whole event. But it's been a great event. A lot of rain,
Right.
and heat over there in Paris, and so we can't control the weather, but we can control how we show up, because everyone is impacted by the same weather.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, there's so many shockers in there. That was a huge disappointment. And in many ways, it almost speaks of the American rugged individualism and focus on yourself. And so I think with the men, that's the thing. You're so focused on your brand and doing your thing, and that you really don't. The team aspect is almost an afterthought, and just throw some guys together and give them a couple of practices, and they got it. No, they don't have it.
Right.
And you saw, I think it was the Chinese team that's all they work on. It's just those transitions, those handoffs. And it was, I mean, we literally the last 4 Olympics or something like that.
Yeah.
You know? How can you make the same mistake every single time?
Yeah. Like you're saying, they're just throwing together a hodgepodge of individuals with maybe, I don't know, a few hours of trying to come together as a team. But how do you shift one's mindset over a couple of hours?
Right.
Or one training, right? One session. It doesn't happen. It has to be a sustained effort with the mindset of team first.
Right.
And then one's own responsibility. And it's showing up year in and year out with regards to the men's running with the Olympics.
Right. It's also a beautiful thing to see some people be super thrilled to get a bronze medal and just show you that it's all about your perspective. And some people are super grateful just to be able to medal, and we're grateful with them. So it was a lot of highs and lows. And the world continues to put pressure on the United States, and that's a beautiful thing. The men's basketball team almost lost to Serbia. And that was a nail biter. And the thing is, for them, there's no winning in it. You're supposed to win the whole thing.
Right.
So the story is if you lose anything.
Right.
And so they were in trouble. And you're playing against a team that plays together all the time. And Jokic is a phenomenal player as well. So that was interesting. I think that was the toughest game that they're going to face. The gold match probably will be much easier against France.
Yeah.
But at least France gets the silver medal. And so it's been good to see the host city win some things. Tommy, before we go into the topic today, community, we want to welcome you all with us. We're going to talk a little bit about political tribalism. I had a chance to look at our show from last week, man, and I just laughed about so many of the wonderful things that we discussed last week. But it put me in the mindset of just starting with this notion of gratefulness and what do you love most about your family now that you are right in the midst of sending Bryce off to college. Tommy, just say a few words about your family members and what you love and appreciate about them.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I've learned to love how my family members love me. And what I mean by that is I'm not always the most kind, pleasant person. I'm a thinker. I get into my own head. I can be serious because unfortunately, I'm dealing with a lot of serious stuff all the time.
Absolutely.
Right? I can be silly when I want to disconnect from the seriousness of the world and work and life. But my family with Bryce, I got to shout Bryce out because he knows me, right? He knows how to approach me. There are times that he would try to get what he wants out of manipulating me, and that's a loose word,
right?
But I know what he's doing, and I do the same thing, right? And so I'm going to miss him and his physical, spiritual, and emotional energy around me, right? I'm also excited about his next steps with my wife Penny. My wife Penny is. She has expanded her responsibilities working for Make It Plain Consulting.
Okay.
And so we're working more closely together, not in the same proximity. I've just turned it over to her. But I love her ability, and this is a tricky one, Eric, where what I do for a living is actually who I am, right? So the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, people building, that's who I am. So I very seldom turn it off. Right? I'm always building people. I'm always watching people, helping people, driving through love. And so Penny has been able to very sophisticatedly balance my work and her work with our love and her love for me.
Right.
So she is very good at, again, not telling me, not pushing me, right? Not shoving me, but inviting me to enjoy life more than just work, right? And so I want to shout out those two, and then my sister Anita, who is my best friend, who shows up at any time and really outdoes herself. From planning, development, and just hearing and listening to me. So I wanted to shout out those three people in addition to my families and friends like Eric Ellis, right, who I love dearly. But thank you for that, Eric. Yeah, big shout out and grace. I have big grace and big love for these folks.
Yeah, same here, man. We mentioned it last week. We are very fortunate to have family in our lives and good friendships like the one that we have. When I think about my family, I mean, I walked out of my room yesterday and I was hearing the sound of my boys. And I was just enjoying hearing that sound where they're having a great dialogue with each other. No argument, no conflict, just having a good conversation. And so one of them was coming up the back stairs and he saw me and I just looked at him and I just smiled, almost like what I believe God did when he finished the earth. And he just sat back and said, "It is good." And I was looking at him like that. He looked at me like, I could see how he's looking at me. That's that love look, Oh my goodness. He got sentimental,
Right.
I don't care.
I don't care.
And so I'm grateful. I called my daughter up just out of the blue, man. She was out of town. Hey, Jillian, how you doing? Don't find Dad. I mean, usually, like, what did you call for?
Yeah.
Just wanted to hear your voice.
That's it. Can I do that?
All right, Dad, I'll hit you later.
Right.
Ain't no thing. It was worth it. It was worth it. And so I'm grateful for them. There's no richer sound to me than the excitement of Judy wanting to tell me about all the things that happened in her day and all the different conversations that she had with clients and things like that. And I'm grateful to be the recipient of that enthusiasm. Yeah. And so I can tell you that, and I love, the opportunity that I have to kick it with Wendell. I went over Wendell's house, and two ball players that I sort of, raised these boys. They were in the city. I was an AAU basketball coach. I picked them up and taught them how to play basketball in many ways, and then turned them over to some other coaches. One, Devin Williams, went on to play at West Virginia for Huggins, and he's still playing professional basketball over in Taiwan, and he's staying over Wendell's house. And this young man, he played for me. His older brother was in jail for like 25 years for killing a guy. And his brother right above him got basically assassinated. I mean, some guys rolled up on him, had him kneel down, shot him in the back of the head. And he was playing for me at the time. And a lot of people were trying to talk to him about avenging that. I'm like, bruh,
right.
Get up out of Dodge.
Right.
Your job is to get up out of Dodge. And so he went on to college, had a great career at West Virginia. He's playing in Taiwan. But to see him at Wendell's house, he looked like Conan the Barbarian. I mean, like 6'9", and he's a big 6'9", and just wide as the doorway. His calves are just huge. And I'm just looking at him, and he's a handsome, dark-skinned young man. And then my other, so Devin and Trent. Trent was my one of my superstars. He's about 6'4". Trent was over there. He's now working for Ford, I think, and making a great living. And to look at them, man, and they just are so grateful for the stories that we have. I mean, they just remember all the things that I said, because back in that, I mean, I was in my heyday of ball. So I'm tortured. I mean, I'm just tortured. I'm talking smack, And they just love all of those memories about, what I would say, So I would say, that's basketball, and celebrating them, and to know that I was a part of their lives, and Wendell continued on as their uncle. They call him Uncle Wendell. And that's what life is about, Tommy, is having people in our lives that we appreciate. I got a bag of sunglasses. There's a few things that I collect. One is watches. I have a lot of watches, and the other is sunglasses. And so I pulled out my bag of famous sunglasses and let them try them on. I like to give gifts, man.
Yeah.
It's just a blessing to be able to bless other people. Material doesn't really mean anything to me, And so when you can bless somebody that you love and give them a little part of you, that's a wonderful thing. So.
Yeah, that's great, Eric, and I'm sure it's a bunch of laughs when they not only reminding you of things that you basically forgot, things that you used to say or do, but to mock you, right? To mock you, that is flattery.
Absolutely, man. They remember because you had an imprint on their lives, and so that's a beautiful thing. Tommy, last week we were talking about just some of the things with the election that's going on. And I think that our interest, your interest and my interest, is in trying to prepare people not simply around this election, but to understand some greater concepts so that none of us sort of sits back and ignorantly just sort of downs the other side, but that we understand what are the revelations, insights that each of us needs to gain in order to be a better citizen, to be a better fellow countryman to others. And so political tribalism is the topic that you and I have sort of delved into, and we're going to hit on today. I'll provide this definition, Tommy, and then have you sort of generally react to it. And then we'll go into the ways that tribalism can impact our ability to see truth and to understand right solutions. Political tribalism refers to the tendency of individuals to align strongly with a particular political group or ideology, often to the point where loyalty to the group becomes more important than objective reasoning, evidence, or truth. This phenomenon can create echo chambers where people only consume information that reinforces their existing beliefs, leading to a distorted understanding of reality. Tommy, what are your thoughts about political tribalism and how it's affecting us in the world today?
So I think political tribalism, Eric, has been around forever. Since we've had any political systems, not only in this America, the new country, but also the old country, be it Europe, be it Africa, be it wherever we were understanding politics, and that is the governing of people. Here's where I think it's really gone to the next level, to the point that you said we can be in our own echo chambers. I think that social media and the algorithms that social media has in place, when we click something, we are then fed hundreds, if not thousands, of information, sound bites, links, interviews, etc., that literally another view, another perspective is not even within that algorithm. So we are literally becoming creatures of our own habit and monsters of our own design. We've designed ourselves to become politically tribal, right? And it takes intentional effort to break out to hear and maybe even accept a different perspective, right? And acceptance does not necessarily mean agreement, right? We simply accept that there's a difference. And so through the political tribalism right now, I don't think we're accepting difference. And this, in some cases, Eric, is all couched on or surrounded by either love and unity, or maybe even hate and divisiveness. So we are feeding ourselves what we want to know.
Right. And so we have here 7 ways political tribalism interferes with our ability to recognize truth versus lies and identify the best solutions. And that's really what we're concerned about, is we want people to have a free brain, a free mind, so that your mind can collaborate with you to make the best decisions. I never want to lose the freedom of my thought, the freedom to reason what makes better sense. What are the right answers? I don't want to be so lost in tribalism that I can no longer see the errors of my way or the errors of the things that people that I support are saying to me. One way that tribalism can interfere with our ability to recognize the truth versus lies is confirmation bias. Tommy, you and I teach confirmation bias. Talk about what is confirmation bias and what is the problem with that?
The confirmation bias basically is where one may have an idea or an ideal, and they're engaged with an experience engage with another thought, engage with what they see, and it really confirms their existing belief.
Right.
It confirms it, right? And so, although they may hear something different, say 100% of whatever they're experiencing is different, the confirmation bias will have them gravitate to the 10% that confirms their thought.
Right.
I'll give you an example. If we look back at January 6th, and there was a phenomenal event that happened at the nation's capital, where some folks saw a lot of people kind of rushing into that building. Some people believed in their core that they were tourists, right? And so then when they heard maybe newscasts or other people say, no, those people were tourists. They were taking a tour of the Capitol. It confirmed their own belief.
Yeah.
Their own
And
belief.
people like
Now,
me would never do anything to hurt the Capitol.
not at all. Not at all. In fact, I would have gone there and been a part of the tour, if not a tour guide.
Right.
Others saying it wasn't a tour at all, right? But the confirmation bias says, although I may see something, although I may hear something, I'm only really gravitating to what's confirming what I see, know, and believe.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what happens is that people look to find an equivalency when we are caught in political tribalism. So for Republicans, January 6th is their date that they want to try to recast,
Right.
redefine. And then they want to equate it to the George Floyd protests. And so they count all of those as rampant violence, out of control, anarchy. And what I would say to you is that for the nuanced thinker, we want to be able to look at all these situations in ways that aren't simply tribal. So Democrats would all look at January 6th as nothing but an insurrection. And I would say to you that it's actually more complex than that. There were a lot of people that were there out of their love and support for former President Trump. They were frustrated at the loss. They may have had some skepticism about the political system, so they were there to support him. It was going to be a big event. They didn't want to miss it. A sliver of them, it could be 25, 30%, were there to do violence or whatever was necessary because they felt that he was calling them there because the election had been stolen. So there were people there that were seeking by any means necessary to stop the lawful transfer of power. But what I'm saying is that if you want to work in ways that are less tribal, you have to understand that events are more complex than just one casting of them. And so as I look at the protesters and all the protests that went down after George Floyd's death, I say to you that the vast majority of those were peaceful protests, but there was some anarchists there, some people that just go around trying to tear up stuff just because they're anarchists and they're looking to instigate things. And so there were some people that rightly needed to be arrested and put in jail. So, but I wouldn't cast anything as all one thing. I want to be able to retain my freedom to have more nuanced thinking. And confirmation bias is a problem because we are simply looking for data to reinforce biases that we have. The second way that political tribalism can interfere with our ability to see the truth over lies is echo chambers. Political tribes often create echo chambers where members are only exposed to information and opinions that align with the group's beliefs This isolation from diverse perspectives reinforces groupthink and makes it difficult to consider alternative solutions or identify falsehoods. Tommy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're in these echo chambers, oftentimes there is limited exposure to difference. In other words, you have entire communities from a political tribalism perspective who have not engaged with a particular culture, a particular mindset, a particular life value system that is different than their own. And so when you think of a small town, fictional town of Mayberry, there are thousands and tens of thousands of Mayberries across
Mm,
this country. And a Mayberry may be in a major metropolitan city. It's just that neighborhood, that community that is that has limited exposure to difference. And so when I start to speak my value system, my beliefs, it resonates with others who are speaking the same. We're literally in a echo chamber. It's I believe, I believe in this, in this, in
mm,
this, and that is I. That is the echo chamber. And outside of that echo chamber, to some people, it sounds like noise, right?
mhm,
It's just too much reverb, right? It's too much
mm.
echo. But inside, it's clear, it's concise, and it is at times affirming of myself, the echo
Right,
chamber.
right. And let's just talk some examples that bring us right into the here and now. If we're not careful, so we're looking at this Republican versus Democrat election. On the Democrat side, you have to be careful not to assume and stereotype all Republicans as believing the same things. We look at the 2025 plan and we say that all Republicans are seeking to make Donald Trump a dictator, that they don't believe in the right to vote, none of them. And so I think we just have to watch, Tommy, sort of the fervor of saying things cavalierly about a whole group of people and everybody sort of emotionally getting wrapped up into saying those same negative things and applying them to a whole body of people. What are some of the issues with doing that, Tom?
Well, one issue personally with breaking that mold is fear. It's literally there's a risk that if I break out of my echo chamber,
Mm,
then I will be alone. And
mm,
it's true, I may be alone with myself or alone with a few tens of millions of people, but I'll be alone. And so the echo chamber is a comfort zone. It's
mm,
familiar. It's a place where I don't have to work hard to feel comfortable and to have that sense of belonging.
mhm,
Again, I don't have to work hard.
mm,
But where there's a risk is none of us, even this country, has not grown and evolved without work. And so, do we take the lazy way and stay within our echo chamber, right? And hope that the outcome is affirming and confirming to us, right? Or do we take it? Do we have courage, Eric? That's what it's going to take. It's
I
going to
love
take
that word.
courage, uh,
Right.
to be different.
And last week, I introduced the term the anterior singular cortex, the place in our brain that thrives off of us presenting to it alternative information. In other words, this professor at Harvard was saying that too often people today are seeking messages that reinforce what we believe. And he said, for us to be a more well rounded thinker, a more critical thinker, we've got to work on building up that anterior singular cortex. Now, the anterior singular cortex is the thing that helps us to regulate our emotions. It helps us to make better decisions, if you will. It helps us to manage pain perceptions. And what happens when we're in an echo chamber, Tommy, is that oftentimes our emotions have been, to use a Tommy term, hijacked. Our emotions have been hijacked. Our decision making is now off because we have not allowed our brain, our anterior singular cortex, to be developed. And so now we're out of balance, and our fear has gone through the roof, and we are in fact experiencing real pain from the thought of the other side winning.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thought, Tommy, and that's why, and it can happen to any of us, because I believe that that is the intention, that's the design in many ways of political parties and the media, is to push our emotions up so high that we can't turn away from the dial. And all of that is affecting us emotionally. And that's why I say a lot of times you have to turn off the news, you have to turn off the negative information, you have to turn on jazz music. You've got to think about the things that you're grateful for, because if you just focus on the negative, it has a negative impact on you.
I think that fear also leads to a sense of loss. So it's not always a reality of loss. It leads to a sense of loss. And that loss could be loss of direction, loss of territory, loss of how things used to be, loss of control, either control of myself, control of how things used to be, loss of simply familiarity, right? Again, we as a people in this country and around the world, we've always experienced loss because we've experienced change. This country today is not the same as it was in 1950, 1960. Even in those days, people had that fear or sense of loss. Oh my, what's going to happen if we do this or that? And then most recently, there were, media was talking about the televised debate between two presidential candidates, right? You have a young, strapping, good-looking man who is calm, cool, and collected, right? He was a Kennedy. He was a Catholic. Then you had another gentleman who was an elder statesman. He had, he was a politician through and through. He was sweating a little bit under the cameras. He was kind of hesitant in his speech and wasn't transferring easily. The optics of the cool, calm, and collected overweighed the optics of the tense, sweaty, and unprepared. And so there are people that say, "Oh my goodness, we're losing, right, our country, right?" Or we can project, we're going to lose our country.
Right.
That's a projection. We're going to lose it if we do not stay within our echo chamber, if we do not contain and remain tribal and confirm one another, because no one else is going to confirm us, right? And that's some language that folks on the stump are saying, right? They're not going to say this about me. Yeah, so we have to confirm ourselves, which is saying, trust your own echo chamber. It's a vicious cycle, Eric.
It is. And so if we look at where the state of the race was before President Biden dropped out, Democrats were depressed. They were discouraged. They had a belief that it was almost like we were headed to the guillotines. People were just, there was a cloud. There was a literal cloud over the entire party. And it was a foregone conclusion. Tribalism had already said to us that when Trump wins again, we're going to have the worst country on planet Earth. and that it's going to be doom and gloom. Many of us are going to have to think about moving to another country. Those are things that people were saying.
Yep.
People of faith lost faith in God.
Yeah.
They just figured that this is going to be hell on earth, another kind of Hitler thing. Some of that is grossly exaggerated, but still the fear of it is real anyhow. And then when President Biden dropped out, Kamala Harris comes on the scene. Trump's demeanor changed from euphoric, celebrating, doing a coronation, picking out furniture for the White House again, putting all his people in place. He went from that to a depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we saw in President Trump, former President Trump, is literally he just got off the trail.
Yep.
Because he couldn't believe it. I mean, he literally just went to Mar-a-Lago, sent J.D. Vance out there on the stump, and he says, I can't do it. He felt robbed. I've been robbed. You know, I had this thing in the bag. Yeah. And, you know, and his disbelief in his own ability to lose has really had a negative, huge effect on him. So it's just interesting to watch how this tribalism thing plays out, because you can work it, Tommy, like it's a game, but then after a while it consumes you. You know, I think that the way we play politics, we play it almost like it's a Super Bowl. And there's an element of it that's almost like sporting in a game, but I think that it very quickly turns to real emotion, real fear, real hatred, real depression, real discouragement that has an impact on us.
I absolutely agree, Eric. I absolutely agree. Question before we move to a couple, one quick question. So when engaging with people, wherever they are, you know, with you or maybe on the other side, and you propose for them to think differently, and they say, how do I think differently? My question to you is, how do people think differently such that they speak and behave differently?
Right. That's a good question. There are a number of ways to do that. I would say the first would be to understand the fallibility of man. Yeah. To understand just the whole structure. So you have to understand the whole structure. That the structure is to try to win over my support. Mm-hmm. And these are people that are talkers. Oftentimes they have egos. They certainly do have agendas. There is really no vested value to them to say anything positive about the other side. So you have to know structurally that when I'm listening to any candidate, their whole objective is to tell me their best story and tell the worst story about the other side. So you got to start by understanding the fundamentals of politics. And then you have to secondly say, if there are good people standing on the other side, there must be some reason why they're there. And so you have to have enough curiosity, Tommy, to say, why would good people, smart people, people with some degree of common sense, what would lead them to be on the other side? And I think as you begin to do that, it allows you to move away from just simply vilifying the entire group of people that may support a side that's different than you.
I agree. That was a great explanation, and thinking differently. I would like to sum it up as proximity and experience. To think differently, you have to have proximity with that difference. And then the experience, the difference that you're engaging with yields an outcome that may be even a benefit, but it's different. So if I say, I don't know why I should think anything different than my particular political party. right? And the question is, well, really, what has your party done for you? Right? It's helped me do this, that, and third. I overheard a woman just last week say that her vote will help her buy a house.
Oh.
And I said, what? She says, well, I'm voting for this particular party, and this particular party is talking about, reducing taxes and all that good stuff, and really creating opportunities for the common American to buy a home. So I'm voting that way because then I can buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that, and I immediately thought of cognizant dissonance.
Right.
The vote itself does not afford you an opportunity to buy a house. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in between.
Right.
And so as I was thinking, how could I help her think differently? I simply asked the question, have you voted before, and did that yield the outcome of you being able to buy a house? Right? She said, no, but this time it will. We went into the echo chamber, really a circular chamber, and I decided to dismount.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I only mentioned that question because it was posed to me, and I didn't have an answer. But I know we have a couple more things, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Right. So Roger said, how close are you to being right versus being wrong? And I think that's if you want to say more about that, Roger, we'd be interested in that. But that is a question that we have to ask ourselves. But I think that the problem for me is that when we buy our platform or our side, hook, line, and sinker, I think that it can be oftentimes a lesser of two evils. I think that politicians don't change the world. Certainly, we are looking for those that are lining up with our interests and hopefully what we believe is in the best interest of the country. So for me, you don't win over my vote by simply giving me things that I want and ignoring or leaving behind the other side. I'm looking for politicians who really are trying to do things that they believe are in the best interest of the whole. And for me, that means I'm going to win some of the things I want, and I'm going to lose some of the things that I might want. But that's what compromise looks like. So that's one of the things that I'm looking for. Emotional manipulation, Tommy, and I'll read this here. Political tribes often use emotionally charged rhetoric to rally their members. This emotional manipulation can cloud judgment, making it harder to critically analyze information or see through lies that play on fears, anger, or other strong emotions. Tommy, how are we seeing that played out right now? Because I think that it's clear to me that the two political parties have made two very different calculations about how they want to approach this election. It looks to me like the Democrats have decided that they're going to lean into joy, positivity, and the future. And the Republicans, the MAGA Republicans, are leaning into aggrievement, anger, and the past. But both sort of looking at how do you leverage emotions in this context. What are your thoughts?
It is emotional intelligence 101, Eric. Emotional intelligence is where there's any event, circumstance, situation, etc. There's a rush of emotions into the person's energy.
Mm-hmm.
And we consider that as your emotional mental board, right? Or board members. And so when you have these emotions in your energy, in your head, in your space, 100% of the time, the loudest emotion drives the behavior. And so what the political factors do is they want to expose particular emotions to drive you and us to the behavior of pulling the lever for them.
Mm.
So if it's joy, which is an emotion, if it's happiness, which is an emotion, if it's love, which is emotion, I speak to all of that to drive you to We're the democratic, or we're the party of happiness, joy, love. I pull a lever for that. If it's fear, if it's uncertainty, if it's gloom and doom, if they win, that's an emotional spark, a spur, if you will. If you believe the other team is going to win, if you fear that, if you're uncertain, then vote for us such that they won't. The parties are driving emotion that overwhelms and overrides logical thinking, data, facts, policy, right? Programs. It overwhelms all of that. So at one point, I don't need to know what their platform is. I don't need to know what their agenda is. What I do need to know is how I feel about them, and make me feel good. I'm going to pull the lever for them. This is emotional intelligence 101.
Mm.
However, we're getting emotionally hijacked. We're
Yes,
no
we are.
longer thinking at all. We're feeling, feeling, feeling. There's nothing wrong with feeling until we no longer have logical thought.
Right, right.
It
The illusion,
simply makes no sense.
right.
Again, this is on all sides and
Mm,
everything we do.
that's
Personal
right.
relationships, political tribalism, relationships at work. It right. We have to understand what's happening.
Right. I love what Roger said here. The illusionist has the ability to manipulate your thoughts based upon what you think you know is true or right. And
Yeah.
so they're really building upon the scaffolding that exists within your own brain and then taking that to this outrageous place
Yeah.
in order to, as Tommy has said, hijack our emotions. Tommy, I'm going to give another impact of political tribalism. That is a word that you said earlier, cognitive dissonance.
Mhm.
When confronted with facts that contradict their beliefs, tribal members may experience cognitive dissonance, and that's almost holding two things in your mind that are different. It's sort of psychological discomfort that arises from holding two conflicting ideas. To reduce this discomfort, individuals may reject or rationalize away the truth rather than reevaluating their beliefs. Tommy, say more.
If we were to think of these three circles, Eric, of comfort zone, learning zone, and the panic zone, most people prefer not to be in the panic zone, right? Panic zone, although it can be something outside of ourselves that we take into ourselves as far as how we feel panic, it may start mentally. I feel panicked, and then it turns physical, just like pain, stress, right? So we prefer not to be uncomfortable in panic.
Mm-hmm.
From a learning zone, I don't know. I would rather feel comfortable. In other words, although I may have two different thoughts in my head, two different experiences, I will gravitate and lean toward what makes me feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Easier, lower risk, higher reward for me. Even if nothing comes out of it, at least I feel good, right? And I'm not minimizing feelings again. That comfort is not only me, it's mine, MINE. It's my
Right,
tribe. It's
right.
me and mine. And so to reduce this discomfort, individuals may reject or rationalize
Right.
away
Seen
the
that a
truth.
lot. We've seen
Yeah.
that a lot, Tommy. Because what people will say is, well, I don't like how Trump talks. He says things the wrong way. I wish he would stop tweeting so much. That's what they used to say about him. But they say, but I love his policies. And so they will find something. So they agree with you. But some of the things that he said, oh my God, they're outlandish. But their fear about the other side will then cause them to sort of rationalize away from that and away from things that they know to be true. And I would say every side does do parts of that. There's the truth. There's a greater truth. It's certainly true that one side can be ultimately better for us than the other. But I would say all of us, if we're not careful, are caught up with this cognitive dissonance where we have two conflicting thoughts in our mind. And instead of being able to consider the validity of both, sometimes we'll reject the one, even when we know it's the greater truth, because we want to just line up with our side. And so we'll rationalize it away and thus justify our own actions. And so it seems like right now, Tommy, that people are saying there's actually just a small percentage of people that are winnable in this election, that the vast majority have already dialed into this political tribalism, and you're working with a small minority of people that are going to decide the election.
The African proverb, Eric, is a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So there are folks that believe that before Biden stepped down, they were going to vote that way. There are folks that believe before Biden stepped down, they were going to vote the other way. No matter what Trump does, they're going to vote for him. It doesn't matter, right? And you cannot convince them against their will. They're of the same opinion still. So now you're just going through the motions and spending money, and I have to watch these redundant commercials, particularly as we get into the September, October timeframe, and my mind is made up. It is the small percentage of people who are on the proverbial fence, who simply need something said to them that makes them feel like they should lean. Right? The facts are out there. Sometimes the facts are legible. Sometimes the facts are a bit confusing. I'm not worried about facts. Right now, I'm on the fence. If you say something good at this moment that confirms me or affirms me, I'm leaning to you. If not, I'm leaning the other way. This is a roller coaster ride.
Right. And what I would say to our community is that you want to avoid political tribalism. The truth doesn't actually need us to fight for it against an opponent who is tribal and not interested in listening to other points of view. As soon as I realize that somebody's there, Tommy, I don't expend any effort trying to convince them against their will. I realized rather quickly that I don't want to jeopardize the relationship over this thing that I know has been built and energized by political assassins in many ways. So I don't, that thing's been charged up by political agents. And so I don't want to fight against that because I want to maintain the relationship, because I think that if you maintain a respectful relationship, you also have the opportunity to hear people's fears about their side. They're more willing to share with you their own concerns if you're not being tribal and confronting them and calling them an idiot for where they stand.
Yeah. Eric, again, we have referred to the Olympics earlier, and in this work, in this time of political tribalism, I will agree with you that that's not the best approach to be connected that way. And so as we're going through this exercise, this floor exercise, we have to know how and when to dismount. We got to stick it. We can't bounce around and lose points. Right. We have to go through the exercise
and stick the landing.
Right? And stick the landing. So if you are one who loves this country for all of its faults, imperfections, opportunities for growth, stay with the exercise. But you do not have to necessarily hold the banner of a particular team when all of the team members are American. And even so, all of the team members are human. So let's hold up that humanity banner, that civility banner. Let's hold that up. And we have to, those who are looking to hold those banners up, have to have the courage and fearlessness to go into the tribalism and say, here's something else to consider. Right. So that's the approach, and we can break it down.
Tommy, I love that. You said all the team members are Americans. We're on the same team. And then we'll close out here with what Roger said. Roger said, there's plenty of living that exists in shades of gray. We don't have to force everything into black or white. And I think that's the point that you and I are trying to make today. We have strong beliefs. We probably have positions, sides that we're going to be voting for. But we believe that all people in this country are deserving of our respect, our love, our empathy, our camaraderie. And so that's what we're saying to you. We're going to continue these discussions as we head into the turbulence of this presidential election, because we have an obligation, each of us, to make sure that we are part of building a more perfect union. And so, Tommy, I want to wish you the best with your facilitation this morning. So glad that you were able to join us. Community, thank you for joining in again for another of our weekly conversations in diversity. Take care.
Take care.
Bye now.